From the first bite in the Garden of Eden, mankind has wrestled with disobedience, pride, and the illusion of self-importance. This is not just a story of terror. It is a warning whispered in the stillness of the late night hours, when conscience speaks the loudest and regret arrives much too late.
Chapter 1. The End. I was suddenly awakened from a deep and restful sleep by a strange and loud noise, a kind of screeching, crawling, and scratching sounds outside my bedroom window that I could not explain. I peered at my watch through sleepy eyes, and it was 9 a.m. in the morning, but through the shadows of my window blinds and curtains, I could see no daylight. The sound was getting louder and louder, so I sprang out of bed and opened the blinds. The frightening sight of millions, no, billions of flying locusts filling the air met me. The entire window pane was covered with their green-brown winged bodies. I fell back and just sat on the floor in shock at the sight of them gathering on at my windows. I tried to cover my ears to drown out the sound, but to no avail. It was maddening. I quickly moved through the apartment and closed all the blinds and pulled the curtains together. I needed to document precisely just how it all happened. I need you to listen to me, try to understand my role in all of this. The predictions of the end of time were precise and entirely, and now that time seemed to have arrived. It all started on a day unlike any other day, but it was apparent that life, as we know it, would never be the same. Where it all began, for me, was on a snowy cold winter's night in New York City. I was walking to the subway station on my way home. It had been a long, hard day at the radio station, where I worked. I was very exhausted, and all I wanted to do was to get home to my bed and sleep. As I quickly descended the stairs, the subway station tunnel seemed even more ghostly, more haunting and deserted than it had ever been before. There was quietness, accompanied by a very eerie silence that was punctuated by the fact that not one soul was on the platform besides me. As I walked to the far end and took my seat on the cold wooden bench, I knew without a doubt this was going to be a long wait. As I sat on that bench waiting for my unreliable F train, I folded my arms across my body to keep warm. I could not stop myself from starting to drift off to sleep. It was then when I heard something very softly, like a muffled cough, right next to me. Startled, I looked down and noticed next to my bench was a homeless man laying on a piece of cardboard. Like most New Yorkers, I would have gotten up and just moved to another place on the platform, finding myself a different bench to sit on as I waited for this darn unreliable train. I was so exhausted and just so comfortable, I was ready to fall asleep, so I decided that I wouldn't move. As I glanced over again, half asleep, I noticed his clothing was too tattered, which meant he was inappropriately dressed for this weather outside, and especially on this cold and blustery night. It seemed like an eternity as many minutes ticked away, and the train was still nowhere in sight. Then suddenly, without warning from his cardboard bed, the homeless man on the floor spoke out loudly in my direction. He said, "Hey boy, do you believe in God?" I was indeed caught off guard, not just by his question, but also from who was asking or who I perceived him to be. I really didn't want to answer or respond to him, so I ignored his question. I thought to myself, "You're nothing more than a smelly bum living and existing on a sheet of cardboard on the floor of a New York City subway station. Probably 10 bums like you have possibly already urinated in the very spot you are now lying in. How did I become so prideful in my thinking? I was working at a job where I have sacrificed my own morals and my common sense for a paycheck every day. If you really analyze my own life, I was no more than a low-paid record jockey who works for a low-level radio station for a penny-pinching, money-grubbing, egomaniac man who calls himself my boss. Suddenly, without warning, I felt a pain, and I looked down onto my coat. I saw a golden dagger sticking out the front of my chest and blood dripping out of me like a running faucet. My sense of time and space suddenly went into slow motion as my vision slowly went out of focus for a few seconds. I looked to my side, and through my blurred vision, that homeless man that was laying underneath newspapers on the cardboard box on the subway platform was now sitting right next to me on the subway bench. I watched in slow motion as he pulled out a fancy golden cigarette holder from his dirty, tattered trench coat. His face was dirty and filthy as he began to put a cigarette in his mouth and lit it. It was strange as I thought to myself, how did a person who's supposed to be homeless acquire such a fancy and expensive lighter? It was even stranger to me, as I seemed to be going in and out of consciousness, that the expression on the homeless man's face that seemed so very calm, as though he was enjoying the moment, appreciating that he was taking my life by stabbing me in the chest. During this time, it was like all my senses were fading and failing. As I tried to keep conscious through hazy eyes, he spoke again. Let me explain this thing to you. God has chosen you to be a part of this saving mankind project, saving them from his wrath, fire, and destruction thing. Personally, I say let's get rid of the lot of you and let's be done with it. But he keeps playing this merciful divine being thing and keep giving you all a way out of your destruction clause. God has chosen me? Me, Ronald Simpson. I'm just a regular guy trying to make ends meet. I'm not a Jesus. I'm no Moses. I'm just a DJ at a radio station. How did I get picked to do God's bidding? And precisely what was I supposed to be doing? Me of all people. Me. Especially since I was about to die. So, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. It's really all up to you, he said with glee. I can make this so very painful that you will be begging me to die. Of course, you have probably figured out by now that I would prefer the hurt and painful part, but that's just me. I screamed back as hard as I could with the pain increasing tremendously. Who are you and why are you doing this to me? Just in that same moment, he grabbed the handle of the dagger in my chest and twisted it harshly. A bone-chilling scream came from my lips as I felt the most excruciating pain I have ever felt in my life. A sizzling, burning pain that screamed out of every nerve ending in my body. He whispered in my ear, I can stop this at any time. Just answer my question. He repeated once again, do you believe in your God? I thought to myself, I must be delirious. I must be close to death. I have to be imagining all of this. This cannot be happening to me. My mind raced in a million directions, but the one thing that became crystal clear was that he needed me to say those words. He required me, almost desperately, to deny God. Through the horrible pain, I figured out if I told him what he wanted to hear, he would win. And I couldn't allow that to happen. The pain increased even more. I tried to gain control over my body and stand up, but I only slid back off the seat and fell onto the cold concrete ground of the subway platform. As I looked down, I watched in horror as the blood poured out of me even quicker. I tried to cry out, but my voice only echoed in the empty, dark train station. There was no one there, no one to help, no one but him and I entangled in this bizarre scenario. Almost laughingly as he spoke, he moved his body over on top of mine, while picking me up and placing my body between his legs. He savagely pulled the dagger from my chest and tightly held the bloody knife to my neck, almost to the point of cutting into my flesh. The pain was beyond description as he whispered, Do I have your attention now? I could not answer, but only listen to his rants as I lie there dying. Sarcastically, he asked again, Really? Do you believe in God? Okay, let's take a moment and think about all of this. If it was you in my position, and your life was about to come to a tragic end, with no help in sight, and on the floor of a dirty New York City subway station, you have a person who has just stabbed you in the chest, holding you between his legs, and is now holding that same knife that he stabbed you with tightly around the jugular vein in your neck. It's probably a good bet that you're going to be seeing God a lot sooner than you thought. Fortunately for me, my faith kicked in, and I screamed, "Yes, I believe in God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, who died for my sins!" He withdrew the knife from my neck, reacting in shock to my answer. Right then and there, he began an ungodly transformation from man to beast, as his hands began to turn into claws around my neck, and he transformed into something. As his black wings began to unfold from under his tattered coat, I was frightened beyond compare. I was nobody. I was no one. And why was this happening to me? Like the homeless man who had now turned into a half-man, half-goat, he seemed to read my thoughts. He replied, "Yes, it is happening to you, my friend." "Who are you?" I screamed as I looked into his eyes, where I saw for the first time in my life the face of death and evil. I could almost feel my soul being ripped from out of my body. "You're Satan." He laughed and said, "Names are not important here, but your answer is. Your role in this revelation thing must be stopped, here and now. You must denounce God or I will take your life. I will rip the flesh from your bones and feed you your own intestines." There was no doubt in my mind I was in the presence of Satan, Lucifer, the liar and the deceiver. "If you do not answer me right now, you'll be begging for your God to have mercy on your soul, and you will be dying for nothing. You will not stand in my way. The time for man is over. He has run his course. You and your kind must be wiped from the face of this planet, just as he wiped away your smear in the time of Noah. It's not that you believe in him so much, my friend. It is because you and your kind are afraid of what awaits you, scared of the dark black unknown, the fear of death." Just as he spoke, my clothes began to ignite. I was on fire, and my flesh was burning. I screamed and screamed from the pain. He roared loudly in an insanely animal-sounding voice, "Is your faith really who you are? Or are you like all the rest, living your life in a lie?" I could not speak as he once again pressed the grip of the knife tighter to my neck. My flesh was on fire, while the fire had no effect on him. The demon whispered softly into my ear, "The unfortunate part about all of this is that he's really going to destroy all of you this time anyway. No one can talk him out of it. So I ask you one more time, boy, do you really believe in your God?" My vision from lack of blood quickly was fading. I began to lose consciousness. I could no longer see clearly. As I lay there dying in a fog of shadow and blurred figures, I heard another voice say, "Let him go." Suddenly there was a loud noise, a screeching, and a roaring sound. I opened my eyes as the F train pulled into the station. I was scared and frightened out of my wits. I immediately began feeling around in front of my chest for a knife wound that was never really there. Once I assured myself that I had only been dreaming, I ran to board the train just as the doors were closing. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I have never been so frightened in all my life. The train began to pull out of the station as the conductor announced on the loudspeaker, "Next stop, 42nd Street and Times Square."